Yeah. So now I guess I'm going to introduce our speaker, who's our keynote speaker for this weekend, John Eder, who is the highest elected Green in the country. He's a Maine state legislator who just got reelected. He's one of only 8 third-party state legislators in the country, and we're very proud to have him talk today. This panel is going to be on his experiences as an elected official. We're going to do another panel at 11 o'clock about his experiences as a candidate. So stick around for that. And John Eder.
Thanks, everybody. Well, this was originally billed as a panel, and so I'd like to sort of keep it loose. There's just a few of us here, and I want to really try to, impart some information to folks that will be useful. And so when we planned it as a panel discussion, I was going to be joined. I may be joined tomorrow by Stephen Spring, who's an elected official from Portland, Maine. Also, he was just elected to the school committee in Portland. And on the school committee in Portland, we now have 3 Greens and a 9-member committee. So we're closing in on control of the school committee, which would be great. In fact, Stephen, who was going to speak with me, also he actually was very close to being the even after only 1 year serving on the committee, he was really close to being the chair. We had an interesting battle. We had a candidate who ran kind of without a lot of party support, and he was just sort of running this stealth campaign on his own with, I think, $800. And and there was a Democratic Party favored candidate, and their goal was to take back the school committee and take off the 2 Greens that we had. And he won his election actually in a court decision by 1 vote. And while that was going on, while the court decision was up in the air, Stephen was making his bid, and he was deadlocked with tied votes 4-4 to be the chair. And whoever prevailed in the court challenge would have been the tie-breaking vote. But to his credit, really a week beforehand, Stephen, a week before the decision came down, Stephen withdrew his name from the running because he had just been elected to the policy committee. And he said there were policy issues that he felt he needed to carry out, and that he also didn't want to be divisive and hold back the board from making progress. And they were starting up, and the week it was going to make that week of waiting was going to make a pretty divisive kind of tenor on the committee. So it was really big of him, and I think he's won the admiration of all of his committee members, and he'll certainly be the chair next time. So we're doing really well in Maine, and I can't be sure why. We have 3 elected officials on the school committee. There's myself. We have somebody on the water board, and we have some people serving on the town level. I think 2 people serving on the town level, and another school board person in Maine. So somehow, it's a modest start. But what we're finding is there's such a great response and such a hunger for something new, and a real hunger for the Green Party, and a real interest on the part of the public and the press. And we're in one of the 3 local papers, the weeklies and the daily paper, every week, and I'm in articles just about every week in one of these papers or another, or in the Bangor Daily News or in some of the other big city papers in the state. So there's once we're taking office, there's a great hunger for, of course, reporters love it because they're tired of reporting the same the same sides of the coin, really basically with the other 2 parties. So they're really digging, like, being able to have something new to report and having a fresh perspective. And so that it's like very cool to be a Green now. And our membership has grown even through the storm of 2004. Our membership has increased by last estimates from the time before by some 5,000 members statewide. And we actually didn't do any serious registration drives, but we are in Maine we are printed on the voter registration card, which is absolutely important. And I know that not every state has that arrangement or has that many Green parties don't have that luxury, but that breaking that barrier has increased our membership steadily since we got on that card some years ago, and that was a result of a court battle. But what I'm finding so far serving in the State House, and I'm the only Green in the State House and the legislature. Right now there's a pretty even split between the Democrats and Republicans, which just got tighter. Not even, but it's very close, paper thin, and it's just got even tighter. A Democrat just became an independent last week. So now there's 2 independents and myself making up, holding the line between the Democrats and the Republicans. So it's making for some very interesting politics. The Democrats have been in control in Maine for the past 30 years, controlling the State House, controlling the Senate. It's flipped back and forth. In the Senate, they've been close, and they've been separated by, at one point, an independent in the Senate, and the House has been close before. But for the most part, the Democrats have been in control for the past 30 years. So it gives us this really stark example and clear-cut way to define ourselves against the Democrats, that they've been in control for 30 years. Interestingly enough, they still, really with great skill, play up the perception to my constituents and their constituencies in the city of Portland, for example, that it's the Republicans who are in control, and that they're railing against the Republicans. So they've somehow really got this language down about how they're the minority party, but the inroads there are slow. They're the party that gets all the money from all of the funders. Things move at a glacial pace, and it's not as progressive as it could be, certainly, because they don't want to offend their backers. For example, a Republican sponsored a bill with the Democratic senator. A Republican from the House sponsored a bill on wind energy. The Democrats tried to block this bill, and they still have it on the appropriations table. They're still trying to block this bill because their major contributor, Central Maine Power, doesn't want it to happen. And so these Republicans and this Democratic senator are fighting to get wind power online while the Democratic leadership wants to continue to study it. So it was makes for really interesting politics in Maine. And when I first took office 2 years ago, I sat down with the clerk of the House in the State House, and she opened up the little book that we call the Register. It has all sorts of information about the Maine State House and legislature. And she points to a section of the Constitution that refers to redistricting. And she says to me in a whisper and a wink, "You want to pay close attention to this particular part of the Constitution." And looks around her, in her closed office as she says this. So this, and I was in the office with her because we were trying to establish that the Green Party deserved. It was the only other party with ballot status in the state of Maine, and that it deserved to have its own office and staff. They were asking me to just take staff either in the Speaker's office, Democratic Speaker's office, or with the other Democrats. Other Democrats is the way they said it. And it was right away we started with a battle. Here I am, a person who really only owned one tie, and I was sitting in the office with this, heavy hitter, the Speaker of the Maine House, and it's just him and I, and it's a very intimidating situation. I'm sitting across him at the table, and there's nobody there to support me, and sweat's dripping from my armpits. And we're talking about how we definitely deserve an office, and he's, playing hardball and saying, well, there's no way we can possibly afford that. And I said, I don't care if it's a closet. I don't care, how many, I don't care if we only get a couple of hours of staff. I want a computer, a phone line, and just some place to hang my hat. So they acquiesced, mostly because of public pressure. So the fourth estate, the media in Maine, has been really helpful to us, actually. The state legislature really succumbs to public opinion, as do, it's a very representative legislature in Maine, small districts. I think in all cases, in all cases of all level of government throughout the country, there's a real response to the media. But in this case, we've been finding that the media has really been serving us really well. And it's interesting because I know in the past we had felt sort of a fear and an animosity toward the media, feeling that it never really covered our issues. And I was always one of the first people to say that, but yet we never sent out press releases. And then we expected them to show up at our events. And we thought, why are they here? They should be here, a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock,
right.
In Monument Square in Portland. And we're wondering, why aren't they here? So we've gotten better. You do it at 10:30 a.m. and you do it on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and we've gotten much better. And you press release it, and you press release it widely. So it was really just a small hurdle to get over. And now we're sort of like media darlings, mainly because they have, it's something interesting. It's something, and the way it works for them, they have to sell papers, and when it's the same old story about the two parties, it just doesn't sell papers the way it does to talk about the Green Party. So now they're kind of fueling in Portland this kind of dynamic of this real showdown between the Democrats and the Greens, and all the papers are really kind of hopped on to this, particularly since we started taking these school board seats, and particularly since I won re-election. So after we established the office at the State House, and I hired on the party's political coordinator, whose name is Ben Chipman in Maine. He's the only hired staff in Maine. Largely, I'd credit him with the expansive numbers that we've had over the past, in membership that we've had over the past 5 or 6 years. He's just a machine, and he helped me to win my election. And so I hired him on, because when you have somebody in the office with you, you basically need somebody you trust. It's not as though you can just hire somebody off the street. So I got a little, insight into how that all begins, with the Democratic Party, with all this sort of, there's a lot of nepotism that goes on, and I was confronted with this first little example of it, that here, well, it seems appropriate that I'm going to hire somebody I know and I trust, but when you see this played out over the past 30 years in the Democratic Party, you get of them putting people into positions in the bureaucracies, you begin to understand what a threat the Maine Green Independent Party is posing to actually millions and millions of dollars in salaries that are being paid out to all of the people in the executive branch. And that's played out in an ominous way that I'll get to in a few moments. But when we did establish the office and hired on a staff, began the legislative session, and had to really kind of reinvent the wheel, because we'd never been there before, and certainly nobody was giving us any tips or hints. We just had the rules of ethics, the state rules of ethics to abide by, the rules of the House, of the Maine House to abide by, which, by the way, the House, we needed public opinion in order to win the office, because the House has its own rules, and not even the Supreme Court of the state of Maine can tell it how to behave or what rules to make. So even though we were a recognized party in the state of Maine, and you would say, well, it's a natural, the law says that we are equal and we should have equal access, that doesn't apply in the House, because the House makes its own rules, and it's the system of checks and balances that nobody can tell the House how to behave within the 4 walls. And those are made up by House rules. So public opinion prevailed, and there was a neat cartoon of me sitting outside the State House in the snow with my desk and a sweater on. So the Green Party is in, and and all that, and people really enjoy this. So what we're seeing is that, the story is so interesting, and people are so much craving something interesting. I mean, so we're to play up on, the sort of, that sort of desire for a bit of a fight, for a bit of something, new and different. I think that, you'll find, I think in other states will find that when we're achieving offices that the media is going to love it. I mean, you know, the papers, we have 2 alternative weeklies in town, and we have, you know, it's a 1-paper town daily paper. And, you know, they've editorialized in our favor on several occasions. At the same time, they're really a status quo sort of paper. So when it comes to you know, real big issues, they invariably side with the Democratic Party. And actually, the paper has its roots in being sort of a Republican Party paper, but now the Democrats have been in control for the past 3 years. They know what side their bread is buttered on, and they just kind of, they just sort of really support the Democrats in a lot of their behavior, which is really sort of Republican. If you look at, you know, for example, they have a Republican, we have a Republican governor now, and a controlled House and Senate by, pardon me, a Democratic governor controlled. I say Republican because he really is more like a Republican. And it'd be more interesting if it were a Republican, actually, because the House and Senate, which is controlled by the Democrats, really wouldn't let this Democratic legislator, were he a Republican, get away with half of the policies that he's been instituting. You know, this wholesale cutting of services and social services, and you know, while continuing to bend over backwards on tax breaks, corporate tax breaks, continue not putting a dent in you know, in the corporate tax breaks to corporations, payouts to Walmart that have no strings attached about job creation or whatever. So when the House first began last session, there was a bigger split between the Democrats and the Republicans that narrowed this second cycle. So I wasn't really getting, I was getting, you know, attention for being the green, and I was getting patted on the head, and they thought I was cute, and everybody thought I was pretty, you know, isn't that cute? And they kind of tickle me under the chin and pat me on the head, all the green, there's the green, you know. And and surprisingly, I'm a pretty sensitive person. Surprisingly, I've weathered all this really well. And I sort of, something I found through my campaign was sort of this level of detachment that I didn't know was capable, because I'm sort of really sensitive. And I have a really acute sense of injustice, which actually has sort of served me and my constituents well. But in my personal life, for years, I didn't think it was my best trait. And so I'm surprised at the sort of detachment I felt and not taking it personally. But that's what's been so great about having the Green Party structure and support of the Maine Green Party, is that I'm always thinking in terms of a we. And that's why it was also really crucial to have somebody there that I hired through the office with me, because it would have been much, sometimes it was just like, it would just turn really into a bitch session. I would go sit down with my aide, and it was just me just pouring out about how crazy this situation was, how unlike anything I've lived in my life it was, and how difficult it was, and the sort of sideways jabs, and some of the more overt, you know, attempts to, you know, to take me out. You know, it was. So I really, having this we, and we really parlayed, even though we only had 8 hours of service from this hired staff. They would only allow us to have 8 hours a week. We parlayed that into full-time 5 days a week, because he coordinated interns, and there was such all the political science professors in the state were just clamoring to get some of their some of their students into this new Green Party office, because it was the only one in the country. And they were really trying to sell their students on what a great experience this would be. And so actually that waned the second time I won, because I think a little bit of the oomph was lost, you know, because the second time wasn't as exciting, you know. But the staff that we were able to and we were letting folks just take the reins. You know, young people were coming in, and in the tradition of the party, which I think is what has us, you know, head and shoulders above and making increases in the amount of activism, is just giving power to young people right off the bat. So I would lick the envelopes and I would fold the letters, because I didn't want to subject anybody who came into the office to like this monotonous. And they would say that their colleagues, their fellow students, were working in offices where they would just do data entry all day and like envelopes all day. And what we were doing was having them write testimony and having them write bills and get right in there and getting into the process. As a result, 2 of the interns that served with us, one took a seat on the school committee, and another who's in law school right now won a seat serving on the water district. So here we have an action on the principle of the Greens. It's like let young people walk in and let young people take the reins and give and show them where the power is and invite them to pick it up. And then how that played out is that these people who are 21, 22 decided that they were so excited by the process that they were going to take a chance and run for office. Now, would they have had that same experience working for Senator Snow or Senator Collins licking envelopes? Who knows, if they would have felt so attracted to the process that they wanted to run for office. But I'd like to think that, we were able to put green, values to work right away in small ways like that. So what happened over that next year is that they were reapportioning for the state of Maine, according to the most recent census data. They had to redistrict, and it became clear that we were shut out of that process. The process of deciding the redistricting was between the Democrats and Republicans, because the 2 parties colluded at some point in the 80s to introduce a new clause, a new amendment to the Constitution saying that the state is a 2-party state. So there's still that for us to deal with, and that's a long way off. But when it comes to being represented in this apportionment, there's no provision for us being represented in reapportionment. And so it was clear to us that, of course, we were shut out of the offices where this reapportionment was going on, and we weren't allowed to even know what the maps looked like or know what the proposals looked like. But it was pretty clear now what was going to happen, and that they were going to just redistrict. So we saw some early maps that just completely obliterated my district, drew a line right around my back, and put me into a district that's to the east of where I live. And I was now in the far extreme of that district, and it lassoed me into this district to the east, to a whole constituency that I didn't know. A constituency that I felt fairly confident that if I had to, I could do well. But there was a 3-term incumbent in that district, and so now I was pulled away from the 70% of the folks who voted for me in this Democratic Party district. And basically, this shows how much they cared about their own constituents. It was a slap, you screwed up. You voted for this green because many, did win the support of many Democrats. So they were sort of, the whole district was sort of given the shaft because of their choice of choosing the green. And so we actually did have conversations with the Republicans, who are now starting to let us into their office to see what the apportionment maps look like and how this computer program worked. It was this program that we didn't have access to. But they helped us to draw up some maps so that we could mount a court challenge, where we were basically saying they were clearly ripping apart this historic community that was bound by geography, the coast, the coastline, a huge hill, where the other side of the hill was another district, and this was clearly for many years a sort of whole district. And so, but one man, one vote is really the only argument that's heard by the courts in Maine, and the courts in Maine are deferential, as they are in most states, I believe, and on the federal level too. They're deferential to the legislature, and so we didn't prevail in court, but what we did do was, again, prevail in the court of public opinion, because it was such an obvious power grab that this offended the sensibilities of many of the Democrats. What their own party had done caused us to win over Democrats who when I saw at their doors told me they'd never vote for Green. Now I was seeing them, Democrats that I'd met before and Democrats who I'd never met, were saying, I'm going to vote for you just because I thought that was disgusting. So they overplayed their hand, and it really did work in our favor. And so that redistricting gave me the choice of staying and running against that incumbent and running to an entire new set of people. Or luckily, my partner Suzanne was flexible, and we had been renters. We just recently bought a house, but we'd been renters. So she agreed that we would pick up house and move back across the line to rejoin the 70% of the folks who had voted for me and put me into office in '02. So we moved back across the line, and that was news. So everything was sort of an opportunity for some news. That was great news. I mean, reporters were there as I was like moving boxes on and off. And I'm trying to smile, you know, and one of them commented, Eder was smiling, while moving, and we find that rather hard to believe, but he was cheery, and and he moved to rejoin his district. So there's this great story, and it's ready-made, where they're saying this guy cares so much that he's moving house to rejoin the people who elected him, And so that, again, was this terrific opportunity for press, and that went on for months, it seemed,